Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to One Place in Conversations podcast. Hello, Jodie.
Hello, Saifur.
How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good. Where are you? In the office? At home?
I'm at home.
Okay.
I can see you're in the office though. You've
I am in
strategically
the office.
placed the banner behind you. I see that.
You do, yeah, you do. Yeah. Rain has stopped today, so that's why I thought I'd come in. I wasn't gonna, all right, because it was kind of pouring down when I woke up. But yeah, hey, you feeling good? You got
Yeah.
a good workshop? It's a workshop. Sorry, we'll have to cut that
Workshop.
one out. No, it's not a workshop. Podcast.
Yep.
For a special podcast for World AIDS Day today, and we've got a special guest from Positive East to join us today. It's Jack Summerside. So I'm looking forward to speaking with him about that. So without any further ado, let's bring on Jack to screen. Hi, Jack.
You're muted.
You're muted, Jack. A famous words.
Good start.
Someone had to start. I thought you were going to unmute me. I'll do that again. Hi, guys. It's a great pleasure to be here on World AIDS Day. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you for joining us, Jack. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, I'm in the cafeteria area here at Positive East, mainly because I forgot to take my laptop home last night. Otherwise, I would be doing it for the kitchen table. But you do get a nice view of our cafeteria area, and often this is buzzing with people here. There's a food offer, and we've got it's a really, really great atmosphere, and we're fortunate. It looks quite swish, but that's because a lot of kind of organisations support us, and so we didn't have to spend any money to make it look so swish. We got that donated, which is fantastic.
Will you hook us up, because your cafeteria area puts our office kitchen to shame?
I was just going to say something like that. Yeah.
Get yourself down. Come on down.
We may also be joined by your colleague Rusty Mulamwa. Forgive me if I've pronounced that wrong.
That will do. Just say Rusty, and it's easier.
Rusty.
Yeah.
So hopefully Rusty will join us as well shortly. But yeah, so thank you. We're going to talk about World AIDS Day on 1st of December. So what is it? What is what is AIDS, and how do you get it and things like that? Because I don't know too much about AIDS myself.
Okay, well, just to start off and explain what World AIDS Day is. It's World AIDS Day has been going for more than 30 years, but possibly 40 now, and it was declared by the United Nations as a focus on issues around HIV and AIDS. And it's increasingly become a focus for the voice of people living with HIV, people such as myself. So, and just to explain that AIDS is a syndrome. The S in AIDS stands for syndrome, and it's acquired immune deficiency syndrome. And that's something that comes about as a result of infection with the HIV virus. So the V in HIV stands for a virus, human immunodeficiency virus. So it's a virus that attacks the immune system over time, and then that can result without treatment to mitigate the impact of that virus that can result in AIDS. I have to say that AIDS in the UK is considerably less common than it used to be, because we do now have much more effective treatment. But in other parts of the world where treatment isn't available, AIDS is still a thing. But we normally talk about HIV as opposed to AIDS these days, because that's reflects the UK situation, and is the situation of most developing countries where access to treatment is available.
Yeah.
So HIV leads to AIDS?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Or it can do without treatment.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So HIV leads to it. So um, how do you know you've got HIV? How do you
Well, the
appreciate
only
that?
sure way to know whether
Yeah,
or not you have HIV or not is to go
yeah,
for an HIV test. Now, that's available at sexual health clinics um, right across the UK, and that's free and access to that is easy. But also, one of the things that we do is put at Positive East, as well as supporting people living with HIV, we have lots of community-based testing opportunities where people can test for HIV and have a broader sexual health screen. And we do those all over the place. I mean, we do them here from our offices on Wednesday evenings and on Saturdays, but also we're out and about right across all the boroughs in the east of London. So everywhere from Havering in towards Tower Hamlets and all the ones in between. And you'll see if anyone follows us on Twitter, we
yeah,
promote where they're going to be, and they're in libraries, they're in community organisations, and if anybody's from a community organisation and would like to invite us in, just get in touch, and we'd be happy to discuss ways that we could do that, and also offering awareness training to your staff, your volunteers, and to people who use your services.
yeah. Positivity. What does positive? What does Positive East do, and where are you based?
Okay, well, we're based on the Mile End Road, and we're literally right next to Stepney Green Tube Station, where we've been going for 31 years now, and we're
Wow.
London's largest community-based HIV charity. Um,
Okay.
and our mission, we've been at the forefront of delivering HIV service and care and support for people living with HIV throughout that time. And our mission is about improving the quality of life for individuals living with HIV, but also the communities that are affected by HIV, um, promoting better understanding and information and reaching out into those different communities. And also, I mean, in the team that I run, the health and wellbeing team, we offer peer support activities. We offer opportunities for people to talk to people similar to themselves living with HIV. So no one need feel alone, and no one need to have no access to accurate information. We also offer practical support around benefits, housing, things like PIP assessments, all that kind of thing. We've got a specialist team of advice workers. As well as I've just mentioned, we have the prevention and testing arm that operates right across the communities, right across East London. So it's fairly quiet, not very busy. Like as you'll see at the moment, our cafeteria is quite empty, and we're still, like many organisations, just building up the confidence of people who are our beneficiaries to come back into the building. And it's slowly coming back. People are having more confidence in coming back. For instance, last night we had one of our international movie nights, which was an Argentinian film in Spanish. And
Oh,
this was for our gay men's peer support group, and I can't remember the
yeah.
name of the film. And so we cooked up some, let me get the pronunciation right, empanadas, I think, which are like little kind of pasty thing. Yeah, I think that wasn't particularly Spanish sounding. That was more Jodie than Spanish. Sorry. And we had that food offering, and we had that film, and we had at least a dozen people here for our international movie night, which we're going to build on and expand over the year. So, by the peer support groups, we're going to be building a lot more. That's just kind of activity based. You don't have to come in and everyone can kind of go, "Oh, I'm living with HIV, it's awful." Okay. But people build their connections through activity based work, and we have a lot. We have a lot going on. A lot going on.
Yeah, sounds it.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
I like that. How often do you have the movie nights?
We're looking at doing them monthly, looking at building up some connections, and maybe with the London Film Festival and having ways. So we've done them kind of irregularly. I'm hoping for us to invest in a big screen, so it's like proper movies and popcorn. So
Yeah.
you might see me there with a popcorn pan. Um, hopefully, don't burn my eyebrows off. So yeah. And we're just at the moment of developing our 3-year strategy, running from the
Okay.
spring of 2023, because we like many organizations doing a refocus, responding to the changing needs of people and what people want. And we're looking to embrace digital better, to have hybrid-based events, because we know it's particularly challenging for people in the outer East London boroughs to come into where we are in Stepney Green. We can often cover travel expenses for people who are on low income to enable them to do that. And for people from African communities, many of those have got children and families, or people have carer responsibilities, we can cover those as well. So no one should be disadvantaged by distance. And we'll be looking at maybe rotating some of our support, peer support and community-based support opportunities for people to come together, and delivering those in the different boroughs. So it's not all about people coming into our building. Wonderful though it is, we want to be doing things. And if anyone's from a community organisation with some space that would like to help us co-host those, get in touch. We'd be very happy to speak with you.
Okay, it's an idea for one place. You say, Jodie.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We're in Ilford, so Redbridge.
Cool.
Yeah,
right. Then
you cover what boroughs?
Oh, you're going to test
all
me
over,
on this. All of these.
All these, so Tower Hamlets, Waltham Forest, Newham, Redbridge, Havering.
Yeah, all of those. That was and I should say I've just joined Positive East. I've been living in Newcastle for the last 9 years, so that was a bit of a geography test for me.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I just done that momentary kind of. You've got to get this right. But
you haven't got Geordie accent. You don't have a Geordie accent.
I lived in London for between 91 and 2014. Then I moved back up to Newcastle because I had family care responsibilities back up there. And that's interesting because when you think about care responsibilities or care and people with HIV, people would often think of the HIV positive person being the carer. Now, it's an issue for a lot of people as we grow older with HIV, which many of us never expected to, and that's because of the advances in treatment, that we find ourselves in those carer roles. And that's interesting. And many people who are from cultures where there's much more of a tradition of extended family, lots of people in those communities from those cultures will be carers but don't recognize themselves as carers because it's just what you're expected to do. In the African culture or Islamic cultures, that kind of thing. So so that's an emerging trend as people's lives and their needs living with HIV change over time.
Okay. And what's your role at One Place East? What do you do?
Positive East,
Positive, sorry.
We've got too many organisations with East in the name.
Yeah.
And we've both got East in the name, so it's a bit confusing.
Yeah. Positive East, sorry. Yeah.
So I'm the head of health and wellbeing, which is a bit of a mouthful of a title, and that covers the health and wellbeing services that we deliver and make available for people living with HIV. So I've got a small team of 3 peer support workers, and I also have within my team our psychologist and our counselling coordinator, because we offer counselling support. We have, I think we've got maybe between 15 and 20 counselling volunteers who are they're qualified counsellors, but they're going to the next stage in their training, and we can make available to them opportunities to have clients to work with, but it also allows them to continue with their training and meet their professional qualifications. But and many of them kind of add that alongside their professional practice. So we're really fortunate that people give their time for that. Our psychologists, we've been running a wonderful program called Reassure, which has been targeted towards women with issues around their migration status. But we've been offering opportunities to come together with a bunch of sewing machines and a sewing teacher. So people are doing things together, and we've come to the end of that first program, and where the ladies are going to do a fashion show with the garments that they've created as part of.
Oh, wow.
And it's called Stitch Sisters, which is our own little version of what we call call it a sewing bee, and it's just wonderful. And so you've got women from a variety of different cultures and organisations, and the act of doing something together like that creates a conversation that you wouldn't get if you just had people saying, "Let's all just come together and sit there and talk about living with HIV." It's and it's absolutely joyous. So yeah.
Can I ask, Jack, how did you get into the field of work that you're in?
Ooh. How long have you got?
As long as you need.
As long as you need, yeah.
I mean, I'd worked professionally in a kind of a community engagement kind of setting up. When I first came to London, I was working in Peckham, in the middle of the North Peckham estate. I was very green and didn't know what the North Peckham estate was when I kind of moved down, because I was straight from Leeds Polytechnic. No, I went to a polytechnic, so that dates me as well. And my degree was in community engagement, engaging around the built environment. So I worked in a place right in the middle of the North Peckham estate, and then I subsequently worked in Lambeth in a similar organisation. But then I was diagnosed HIV positive myself, and I happened to be a volunteer at an organisation that was then called London Lesbian and Gay Switchboard, which is now called LGBTQIA Switchboard, or something like that, usually just known as Switchboard. And we did a lot of calls around HIV, inquiries around that. And so with just building up that experience and bringing my community engagement experience from other sectors, I started to work then for an organisation called Terence Higgins Trust. And then subsequently I worked for another organisation called the UK Coalition of People Living with HIV and AIDS. I worked internationally for the global network of people with HIV. And then I went to Newcastle. Worked in a very different, but I've come back refreshed and enthused and really excited at the opportunities that we can respond to what people's needs are today, now, post-pandemic, and just kind of bring it all to life and get this cafeteria area full again. That was a perfect history. I bet you wish you had nice now.
No, you've done a lot. From what I can hear.
Yeah. So you said that you were diagnosed with HIV.
Yeah.
How did you feel? How was your reaction? How was your mental health when you found you discovered that when you were diagnosed?
I mean, it's a long time ago for me. We're talking about 1995, so it was very much a different world then. In 1995, there wasn't effective treatment. And basically, I was told, may on average 3 years tops, go and max out on your credit card. You may as well. So I did. However, that was in the June of 1995. However, in the very early spring of 1996, there was a revelation at a medical conference. The International AIDS Society conference was the revelation of something called combination therapy, which many people would have heard of, which were the first effective treatments that suppressed HIV and allowed people to live longer, healthier lives and not progress to develop AIDS. So there I was, sort of 9 months after the diagnosis, and the impact that meant, and coming to terms with your own mortality and what the future was going to be. Your world just kind of fell apart. But then then I was up to my eyes in debt. But 9 months later, it was like, no, you're not going to die. We've got this medication for you. And it took me the next 10, 15 years to pay off the damn credit card.
Wow.
Yeah. So the repercussions, although the treatment means my ability to lead a normal life, the impact, even from all those years ago, it meant I never got on the mortgage ladder. It meant opportunities for international travel. You couldn't get travel insurance unless you paid an arm and a leg. Till well into sort of say 2000, early 2000s, it took a long time for things like the insurance industry, the financial industry, the mortgage industry to catch up with those changes. In what it meant. It's much better now, but the impact on my life has been immense. I mean, I'm 58 and I'm private renting from a friend a bedroom, and it's like, and my contemporaries who didn't have HIV have all got houses that are kind of worth quite a lot now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, it did impact on you quite a bit.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting project. Wow, I can't. Yeah, it's interesting. And how are people? How are people around you? Your friends? How did they? Were they supportive?
I was fortunate, and as I mentioned, I was volunteering with an LGBT phone helpline, so people understood what that meant and were very supportive. But there was an awful lot of people kind of, that thing where people's head goes on one side and they go like that, and the sort of slight pity thing, because certainly at that time, right from the 80s when it first happened, so many of us had seen so much death and illness, and that hadn't changed at the time. So it was understandable. People didn't know quite what to say. They could say, "Well, we'd support you," but it was like, "He's the next one," kind of thing. And there wasn't much that could be offered in the way of solace.
That's crazy. So to think before 1995, if you contracted HIV, it would pretty much definitely lead to AIDS, and you would end up dying within 3 years, roughly.
Well, I mean, I was given the 3 years as a kind of ballpark, but I mean, there were lots of people that didn't it didn't progress for quite a number of years. So that's kind of what I remember being told, kind of thing, and that is kind of decent average at that time.
Right. I'll be honest. Obviously, Saif, when I agreed to co-host this podcast with Saifur, and obviously it's for World AIDS Day, I don't actually know really much about AIDS, to be honest. And I was going to research, but then thought, well, as the aim of the podcast is to raise awareness, it's probably a very good opportunity for me to also learn. But obviously, I know, although I don't know really anything about AIDS specifically, I know that there is a lot of stigma around that. It's only, the stigma that I've heard of is that it's predominantly in gay men. Is that true? Or
yeah, I mean, certainly if you think about the UK epidemic, the UK situation for HIV, that is true. The good proportion, a much greater proportion of HIV is amongst gay men, and that kind of grows up historically. If you think about HIV, the virus that can lead to AIDS in a world context, it's gay men in developed countries. But if you look at various parts of Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, Indonesia, and various parts of India, that right across the world, it's a heterosexual pandemic. And that is largely kind of built up historically because the HIV went undetected. It wasn't known about in Africa for decades. And it wasn't until cases affecting gay men on the west coast of the United States began to be identified. And it took several years for it to be understood that HIV was the causative agent, the issue that was leading to AIDS. So, and I think that reflects some of the kind of worldwide inequalities that play out in a very diverse area like East London. It's that wasn't detected, that wasn't noticed until it was affecting people in developed countries. And that's when that groundswell of medical research to find out what the cause was and the development of treatments came into place. So it is true to say it's not inappropriate to point out the communities where HIV is most prevalent. And because it's most prevalent, that's in those communities, that's what leads to increased infections. So it's not because of anything specific that gay men are doing. It's like, I could say to you, are you having safer sex? But if the only person that you were to have sex with, Jodie, was somebody who didn't have HIV, that's safer in itself. So it's just like, HIV doesn't magically occur because it's particularly people or because the sex is unprotected. It needs to be there. So there's a saying in epidemiology, saying prevalence leads to incidence. So if you could imagine, if you were thinking about, did I want to catch a cold or not? And it depends which carriage you choose to go into on the tube. And if somebody in one of those carriages has got a cold and is sneezing, you're going to catch it. You get into another carriage where there's nobody sneezing, nobody got a cold, you're not going to catch it. It's not just the act of being on the tube, if that makes sense. So that's my whistle-stop tour of epidemiology. But, so certainly in the UK, the majority of people living with HIV, and therefore the majority of at risk, because that's people who have sex with, is gay men. And also people from certain Black African communities, with a smattering of others. But we've just recently had figures where because the availability of something called PrEP, called pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is a kind of treatment that somebody takes every day, and it's a version of HIV treatment. Somebody who hasn't got HIV can take that, and that will reduce the chances, very much reduce the likelihood of them contracting HIV. So a lot of the things we do is promoting access to this PrEP. In fact, one of my own medications, a little blue pill, not that blue pill, a different one,
I don't know what you're talking about.
is one of the ones that's used for PrEP. We do find that availability varies, and access to it, knowledge about it, particularly from women in those greater risk communities, is much harder, and it's much less well known about. So that's another part of the programme of work that we're doing in collaboration with other organisations across London.
So at Positive East, the majority of your clients are men. Is that right?
I would say it's half and half. I mean, certainly in terms of our peer support thing, we've got a women with HIV support group that goes on, and we've got a mixed men and women for heterosexual men, and then we have a group for gay men, and those are the core things. But we have a lot of activity-based stuff that are open to everybody living with HIV.
All of them.
It's really important that people come together from different cultures, different perspectives, different backgrounds, and we do a lot of activity-based stuff. And because what unites us is so much more than what divides us. I mean, one of the things I'll say about one of the great joys of my life has been the opportunity to meet and build friendships, very loving friendships, long-standing friendships with people I would never have come into contact with otherwise. I would never say to anybody, get HIV and broaden your horizons. That's not what I'm saying. It's given me a huge amount of personal and professional stuff that I wouldn't change for the world.
Oh, that's lovely.
It's got me thinking, isn't it? Yeah.
You know, I will say, obviously, I know I've already said about how I didn't really know anything about AIDS or HIV. But the only thing I ever remember I'm 32, so I'm a little bit younger than yourself. But the only thing I ever remember seeing, like media-wise or TV, etc., in regards to AIDS was when Mark Fowler, Pauline's son, in EastEnders had it many years ago. But besides that, I haven't don't really see much on TV about AIDS or HIV.
Funny you should say that, Jodie, because from about the late 90s, when I was working for another organisation, another HIV charity, I was the script advisor for BBC drama around the EastEnders storyline, around the Mark Fowler storyline.
No way.
So it wasn't me that killed him off. So they got
blame tag.
And this was back in the day when lots of the soaps cover kind of quite serious and in-depth kind of social and health issues and things like that.
Yeah.
That didn't used to happen. It was, I mean, back in the day, it was more about, it was more about kind of a glass of milk stout in the snug and Ena Sharples, and
Yeah.
you're too young to know who I'm talking about. But that wasn't the kind of mainstay of soap, and but they decided they would have this character who was HIV positive, and then they chose that it would be a heterosexual man. It was never kind of covered how he'd become infected. That was never explored in the series. But I used to go up to Elstree every 6 months and help them map out the storyline. And then they would send me draft storylines when they were written up for comment. Was this accurate? Was it appropriate? And then I would look at the final scripts, and then they would show me. I would get preview videos of the episodes that were featuring kind of stuff around HIV. So
No
all this,
way.
That Peggy, get out my mouth, and all that. And that tracked over time with changes, with effective treatment, and then it was difficult toward the end because they did want to write the character out. But this was just at the time when treatment was becoming more and more effective. So it was a really difficult pathway to find. And in a way, I regret that the storyline ended in the way that it did, because it wasn't particularly realistic. But I had to go to these meetings and say, look, people aren't dying of AIDS in that way. He's taking his treatment. He's fine. And so off he disappeared on his motorbike. And all this kind of thing. And
I remember it and him leaving like that.
And then he'd got a job on the bill, the actor Todd Carty, who was absolutely great and so supportive. It was a real, how difficult that was for him. A youngish man, young compared to me. I would say he was in his kind of early 30s. With a wife and 2 small children, to be publicly seen, and how people misunderstand soap characters and they blur that real life. Incredibly brave of him. So great for him to have done that. And I think all of us owe of gratitude. And it was only towards the end, but that's the mechanics of soap. And it was like we couldn't have like a train coming off the bridge and smashing into his market stall, because as we felt it was felt the audience would feel cheated if it wasn't something related with HIV. So we had to kind of concoct a thing where his treatment wasn't working, and that he'd cleared off on his motorbike, and missed all the advances in HIV treatment. And we also had to make Walford General not a particularly good hospital, so that they weren't responsible. So it was a little bit unrealistic. And you're right. I mean, and since that time, all the soaps are desperate. All of the charities about health issues are desperate to get coverage in the soaps, but that had never been done before. So I was getting people from all kinds of charities, health-related charities and issue-related charities, phoning me up and saying, "How do you get to be on EastEnders? How do you get to be on Coronation Street?" And it was like, well, I can't tell you because they came to us. So,
So wait.
One at a time.
And I got no. Sorry, what?
No, I was just going to say, what are the odds of that the only memory I have media-wise or TV-wise in relation to AIDS, and you happen to be the script advisor.
Yeah, small world. Yeah.
Very small world.
I'll send you my autograph in the post, or we can save it. Place East. I mean, there were some. I mean, years and years before, in the 80s, there were the famous kind of tombstone ads, which were very kind of doom laden. You'd both be too young to remember those, and
I don't know. Saifur looks a lot younger than you.
No, I can't remember that either.
No. But we'll not touch on those. I mean, they had a mixed impact because they were quite doom laden, but didn't have much information in it. It had John Hurt. There were all these falling tombstones with AIDS engraved on them, and John Hurt. Remember John Hurt? It was very kind of, there is no disease that can affect anybody, but nobody knows what it caused, and it caused an awful lot of kind of terror. But it was a lot more than was done in a lot of developed countries, because a lot of countries didn't have any kind of public health program at all. if we had our time again, we probably would have been done differently. I think it terrified a lot of people, which may have saved lives, but I think the impact it had in terms of stigma and fear, particularly for, say, gay male teenagers who were hearing things about it, and the world was a very different place. There was no gay marriage. There was none of that. There was Section 28 at the time, very much a hostile environment. Some of that sounds familiar. Yeah, some of the other things that are being played out today. It was a very different world. So there was that. But I mean, after EastEnders, there was also an HIV positive nurse in, I can't remember if it was Casualty or Holby City. And that lasted for about 2 seasons, and that had a much kind of happier ending. There was none of the kind of token gay character or token HIV positive character who died at the end. I think they went off for a civil partnership across the suspension bridge in Bristol, so it was a much happier ending. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of that soap now. It was on Channel 4 with.
Oh, what, Hollyoaks?
No, not Hollyoaks.
Because there was a character I used to watch Hollyoaks called Steve, and he was HIV positive.
Yeah.
And I just remembered there was a storyline around that.
Yeah.
But I didn't watch it religiously.
I'm far too old to follow Hollyoaks. I don't think I've ever seen it. So I haven't got time for soap. It's the arches for me.
Wasn't there a series? Was it last year? Around living with HIV or AIDS.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was called "It's a Sin," and it was made by the guy who brought Doctor Who back in the early 2000s, Russell T Davies. And so that was a story of a group of friends in the 1980s and the impact that the AIDS, as it was then, because I don't know, HIV had been identified, and the impact that had on this small group of friends. And there were mostly gay men in this group of friends, because that reflected a version of what was happening for certain communities. And many people would have seen that, and it's intense. It was I couldn't watch it at the time because it was too triggering and bringing back kind of memories of what it was like then. So that situation of back then, the 80s, it was very hard to be gay or non-conforming in anywhere but, say, London or Manchester. So there was a lot of people kind of legged it, and so you had these people coming together as their kind of families of choice, and then slowly, one by one, some of the characters were succumbing to AIDS, and it wasn't known what it was. And then there's a young Welsh lad, one of the characters, and he starts to become unwell, and ends up going back to Wales and his mum, and he gets early onset dementia because of the impact that HIV is having on his brain. And it's heavy. It's heavy going. So you can see why I didn't kind of want to watch it when it was.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But I mean, the world's a very different place now. So I mean, with effective treatment, as I've described, somebody diagnosed with HIV. You'd be enabled to go on to treatment immediately. You don't have to wait until there's any kind of deterioration in your health, which used to be the case when it was a bit more less well understood. But also, really significantly, is if somebody's on effective treatment, such as myself, there's a thing that's called U equals U, undetectable equals untransmissible, which means somebody living with HIV, diagnosed, on effective treatment, cannot pass HIV on to another person. Cannot. And that's from long studies of thousands of people. People were in relationships where one's positive and one's negative. There's not been a single HIV transmission in those. So that message, U equals U. And that's a really, really important message to get out for World AIDS Day. The theme for World AIDS Day this year is equalize.
Equalize.
Last year's theme was I can't remember the exact wording, but it was striving for equality, and that's about health equity, health access, treatment access, equity in the stigma around HIV. So this year's theme builds on that, is not just reflecting on and recognizing those inequalities, but to actually take action to equalize. So I think it's a really positive message. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So anybody
definitely.
wants to come on board and help us spread that U equals U message and actually break down that stigma that is still there amongst many people, and misunderstandings of what
Yeah.
HIV is and what it means. If you'd like us to come to your organisation, give us a call. We'd love to come and talk to you. Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
I know as part of our mental health services, which I'm the coordinator for, we have monthly meetings where we invite service users in and we have guest speakers.
Cool.
So definitely, if you could come along to one of I'll contact you outside if you could come to one of our meetings in the coming months.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's call it a date, Jodie.
Let's call it a day.
I would love to do that. And you're one of my group members. We'd be very, very happy to do that.
Yeah.
So what are the challenges of being on long-term medication?
Oh, well, I mean, I was on some of the earlier medication, which some of the side effects weren't known about. So I have a chronic pain condition called peripheral neuropathy. It's similar to what a lot of people who have diabetes have, which is where without getting too technical, it means I'm in chronic pain with my feet. So
Right.
particularly in extremes of temperature and things like that, constant pain. And and yes, I keep smiling because I use a mindfulness approach. But the minute I mention it, it's that I go, oh, my feet. But that's just one of those things. I think also, is there an alarm going somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm gonna move.
That the daily test. They could have held it off for a little while, couldn't they?
Yeah, it's got off now. Yeah.
And also because of one of the medications I've taken, it causes bone demineralization. So I've got the equivalent of I share with the Queen Consort Camilla osteoporosis as a result of that long-term use of that treatment. But a lot of the more modern treatments, are safer. They don't cause the same kind of problems, because a lot of us were kind of, it was experimental back in the day, really, when that stuff was available in the late 90s, early 2000s. However, it's important to recognize it's in many ways the activism of people living with HIV to push for treatment availability, even if it hadn't gone through all of the trials and stuff like that. We were saying to people, look, we'll take the risk because look what our alternative is. And it really changed the way that medicine and the pharmaceutical industry engaged with people as patients. Because doctors in the pharmaceutical industry think of us as patients, but actually we're all people, and some of the time we're patients. And that whole dynamic, I think, a lot of that with really gobby activists. And again, I think one of the things that's been really interesting in that world of activism and people engaging and the support available to people with HIV is as recognition of the pandemic not just affecting gay men but affecting wider communities. The way that organisations threw open those doors and embraced people with that commonality from a range of different cultures. For me, that's been incredibly enriching for my life, and been one of the great privileges. So, and again, I won't stress, I would much rather not have HIV. I would much rather my life had taken a different path. But the path that it has taken has brought many joys in ways that wouldn't have been there. So
That's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
No.
Can I just mention, it's World AIDS Day, and it's just a few days after our Red Run in Victoria Park. So I'd like to tell people a little bit about that, because as soon as we've got a date available for Red Run 2023, we would love people to get involved. It's a big community-based event. It take place in Victoria Park every year. People can run, they can walk. It's like a sponsored run, but you can run, you can walk, you can sashay, you can come and see me in one of the tents where we're displaying some of the AIDS quilts. And if you don't know what that is, Google it or come along next year. We would love people to take part. There's loads and loads of things happened. As I said, this year, the 2022 one took place on Saturday, the 26th of November. You can anticipate that it's probably going to be the last Saturday of 2023. You'd be a fool to miss it, and so just keep watching on social media and our website for that date.
Send us the details when when you get the more info, and we'll settle. We can gladly put it out.
Share it. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'd say that people follow us on our main social media platform for information around things like the HIV and other sexually transmitted infection testing that's out in the community, and promos about the kind of community support work that we do, but also special events like the Red Run. Follow us on Twitter. Just search Positive East and you'll find us, and it's the whole world will open up. And we have fantastic events on all the time, fundraising and community coming together events. We've got a few things going on tonight as well, but I haven't got them on my notes in front of me. So have a look at our social media, and if you fancy a night out tonight to mark World AIDS Day, we've got stuff that's high culture and something that's a little bit more kind of disco dancing orientated.
All right.
That dates me, doesn't it? Disco dancing. Yeah.
Disco dancing. Jack, I want to ask you quickly. What advice would you give to anybody who is, I don't know, newly diagnosed, or diagnosed and feeling not so great about themselves, or what advice would you give?
I would say get in touch with us at Positive East. One of my colleagues, Resty or Nick or Mina, will take down your kind of details, and we do a kind of registration assessment, find out what your needs are. We can plug you into the range of different services that are available. If you've got any doubts, speak to the people at the clinic where you got diagnosed, because we have very close relationships with all of the sexual health clinics and the HIV clinics across the whole of the all those boroughs that Jodie kindly listed. My geography is terrible. And, I think the key thing is come and talk to us, and there is no need to be alone. Don't just Google information. Come to us and we can give you the actual facts. We've got things that can help. We've got like courses and workshops for people who are recently diagnosed that we do in partnership with other organisations across London. We've been running some really successful workshops that help people kind of reflect on their own kind of internalised self-stigma and how that can limit what you do. Pick up the phone, email us, Google Positive East, find out what we do, and come on down.
Can you self-refer, or do you need a professional? You can self-refer. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing, that lesson learned about all that activism of people with HIV. You don't need a medical professional. You don't need one, but you do for your medical care. But in order to contact us, you can, you could even come and knock on the door and come in, and one of the guys on reception will take down your details, and we'll organise a registration and assessment call, which can be done in person or over the phone. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's open up a whole new kind of, kind of,
you don't even know what the word is.
Yeah. No, like Jodie said earlier on, I didn't know too much about AIDS and HIV either. So it, open, a bit more about it. So thank you, Jack.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I thought you were going to burst into a chorus of a whole new world there for us there.
I keep that for our cordless choir. No.
Go on.
No, we have a cordless choir, which we, try to sing now and again. Right.
Speak for yourself.
All right.
And that's another thing I haven't mentioned. I'm part of a choir of all of HIV positive people called Joyful Noise that runs out of the NAS project in Hammersmith. And it's a joyful noise. I have to admit that some of the bits that I make are a particularly pleasant noise. However, I did find singing the bass line to Make No Mountain High Enough on the Piccadilly line the other morning a fantastic way to clear a space. So have a Google of Joyful.
Well, come and join us.
Yeah. I don't know if we'd call ourselves Joyful Noise, but
noise, maybe just noise.
So I can come and crack some windows in Ilford as well as cracking windows in Hammersmith now, can I?
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you so much for inviting me here today to mark World AIDS Day. You've given us a platform to talk about what the realities are today for people living
absolutely
for the pandemic, and pandemic doesn't just mean COVID, and I think it's so important to get those messages around stigma out and the messages of you equals you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you
for coming.
Thank you, and thank you, Jodie, for coming along and hosting with me.
All right.
On this day, and until next time, we've got another podcast coming up as well, haven't we, Jodie?
Have we?
One day.
Yeah, we do. We have one on Saturday for International Day of People with Disabilities.
Yes.
Where we have a number of guest speakers coming along. Who represent all different types of disability, because the theme this year is I can't remember, not all disabilities are visible.
That's it.
So we've got a range of people with different disabilities, hidden disabilities coming along. So tune in on Saturday.
That one.
Our next
go on. No, and I was just gonna say we're on Spotify, so subscribe to our Spotify podcast, and catch us on YouTube, catch us on Facebook, we're everywhere, right?
Instagram.
So Instagram. Didn't know that.
Instagram.
Cool. Excellent. Well, thank you. I'm gonna let you go, Jack. I'm gonna let Jodie go, and I'm gonna let myself go. And until next time. Excellent. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.